Okay, you want your scene here? It's finally up, Jim.
All right. I was excited to finally talk with Jim. Love this EP for the Leviathan. Cannot wait for more. I'll probably have to get another Woad Witch tattoo. Who knows? But yeah, I was really looking forward to connecting after such a short period of time. He is one of the only bands that submitted to us. It was actually through threads that I started talking with him that actually made it on the show because if you haven't figured it out, we only do stuff we really like.
I'm going to say two words before you see this interview. Pink guitar. That's all I'm going to say. Mm. Take it away. Obvious question. Silence since 2018. Talk about the catalyst that kind of brought Leviathan back. I mean, was it like a slow thing, or was it a quick moment, or like what brought it back?
Do you know what? It was a quick moment. Um, um, it's a long story, but the previous members of the band who were still, they're very good friends of mine, but we have kind of like sort of drifted apart. There was some mental health issues, and one of the guys had a bunch of new music that was on his computer, and he just decided that he was done with everything to do with music, and he deleted the lot.
Oh my
Um,
God.
and I kind of not really played for a bit at that point, even though like my job is I'm a music tutor, so I'm a guitar teacher. And I still a guitar teacher at that point, but my interest in music had just tapered
Mm.
off a
Mm.
little bit. And but that moment was like devastating. And I realized at that point that if I felt that strongly about it, that I should really sort of pick the guitar up for myself again and start playing properly. And that was the catalyst, that moment. And obviously it took a long time to kind of bring it back from the dead. But
Yeah, yeah.
in the middle of that, there was COVID.
Right.
COVID I was sort of getting somewhere with it, and then COVID came along and it all got kind of shelved, and then after that it was a matter of finding somebody to do the vocals, and that was a long process. I was kind of relying on someone to do it who was really good,
Hmm.
uh, immensely talented, but he just kept letting me down. And
Oh
in the
man.
end, Chris, who is on the EP, who I've known for since I was sort of 20 years old, he stepped in and finished it and did it all, and then finished it off. Um, so without him, it wouldn't have happened. But going back to the previous point, it was a single moment in time, and if that moment hadn't happened, I don't know. I don't know whether I would have done it or not.
Oh, we're glad you did.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, in,
Well, hold on before we get
oh,
too into it. You got to explain the pink guitar. It looks like it's from like the second Vixen album or something. Like, is that like for your students, or is that, I mean, I wouldn't put that with the Leviathan. Yeah.
So yeah,
wow.
yeah, I just love it. It's just great. I've always loved the whole 80s vibe. So
Yeah, yeah.
I have another Instagram profile which is 60 seconds of shred.
Right,
And,
right.
and that I'm kind of exploring all the Steve Vais and the Paul Gilberts and the Yngwie
Yeah, yeah.
Malmsteens. But there's two sides to my personality. There's the pink nonsense, and then
There it is. Now
there
that I
is.
could see. Yeah.
So there you go. But I love this guitar for a number of reasons. One, because people kind of do find it quite shocking. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I do get comments on YouTube videos that I play it in where people say things like, a pink guitar, you shouldn't use a pink guitar for metal,"
Right.
or various knuckle dragging type kind of like gatekeeping.
God.
But
Uh,
I love it. I love the vibe. It's a great guitar, and I play it loads. So
I
there.
think as soon as I picked that up, I'd start playing it just like Paradise. I wouldn't be able to not, like just like
Yeah,
the
fair enough.
guitar is asking for it. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm. Well, anyway, you were gonna ask a question.
So, in the past, you were involved in projects like Extreme OD and Nailed. Where were the key lessons, good or bad, that you carried forward into the Leviathan?
The Redux.
Um, I think that I my experience with Nailed, was mostly a positive one, except that back then I wasn't all that confident as a songwriter. So I very much left it to the other members of the band to do that element. I actually had convinced myself that I wasn't capable of doing it. So in that sense, it's a negative because there were some real kind of like strong personalities there, and I just kind of just did my own thing, but didn't really kind of put any of my ideas across. But then the positive side of it is that we did play a hell of a lot, and we did a lot of rehearsing, and we did a lot of gigs as well. And I think I grew as a musician during that period. The Extreme OD, that actually wasn't me. That was the previous bass player, Ian. There's a load of stuff online where I'm not surprised that there's been a few little kind of like kind of continuity errors. The drummer on this the last EP was actually a guy called Simon Blakelock, who I have only met once, and I met him on the day that he recorded the drums. I talked to him a lot online, but I only met him once. We never rehearsed. We didn't do anything. He just like demoed the stuff at home, and then he just came into a studio and did it all in one session, and just did the lot. And
what a great name!
Yeah,
it's a
Simon
great name.
Blakelock.
I would believe he was in Diamond Head or something with that name. You know, like...
He's also from Yorkshire.
Right,
so he's from that part of the world that's like.
Yep.
Anyway, so he did the drums, and then the dude that I'm jamming with now is David Buchan. I don't know how you pronounce it actually. I don't know whether it's Buchan or Buchan, but he's going to do the next one basically. Sorry, I digress slightly.
No, it's okay. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah.
So I love the name Leviathan. It carries such heavy symbolism. So were we talking like biblical sea monster with fire-breathing heads, or is it more like the abstract concept of chaos incarnate? Maybe both.
It's a little of both things, and there is another element to it. That there's actually a book called Leviathan that was written by a guy called Thomas Hobbes. We're getting into some kind of like sort of socialist theory here. I did social sciences when I first went to university. And there's all sorts of connections with this particular piece of academic literature, because it's not like a novel. It's a treatise about social constructs. And it ties in with a guy called Jeremy Bentham, who you will never have heard of, because again, he's a social theorist who was alive in the 18th century. And he came up with this concept of a thing called a panopticon. And a panopticon's like a prison that's got a central, it's like a circle with a central column, and you have one guard. And the guard can see in 360 degrees what everybody's doing at all times. So this was his design for the perfect prison. And that kind of fed into some of the imagery from the first Leviathan album, where there was a song that was called Panopticon. And one of the other guys in the band wrote a song basically based on that concept of being constantly observed. So it kind of all ties together. But there is the biblical thing where, you know, the giant sea beast, because that's cool as fuck, right? It's amazing. But it also ties into some of the lyrical themes that we use later on.
Yeah, if you think about it, we are always watched, because there's one true crime show that's just called See No Evil that is all about crimes that were solved through different camera angles, and everybody's got the doorbell cam, you know.
Well, I think you have even more in the UK. There's cameras everywhere, right? I mean,
yeah.
You know, you ever thought you'd be sitting at work going, "Who is ringing my doorbell?" Oh, it's the mailman. It's pretty funny.
Interesting.
So has your interpretation of the Leviathan evolved since the band first formed, or does it mean something different to you now after time away and the resurrection of sorts?
I think it. I think in terms of the name, I guess it's kind of stayed the same. In terms of the direction, I guess the direction of the music has shifted a little bit, and it's kind of gone towards more the kind of Black and Death, um, in that little niche. Whereas before it kind of had elements of kind of death metal and thrash, and there was a little black metal in there as well. And it was kind of a bit more technical, a bit more kind of, it kind of went off in the kind of tangent directions, I think it's a little bit more cohesive now than it was.
Yeah, I like the fact that you're Black and Death, but your songs aren't like 18 minutes long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with
Yeah.
that. I mean,
No.
I was reviewing an album this week and there were 4 tracks, but it was an hour long.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'm finally, I put in my headphones and I'm taking notes and I thought, all right, last song. Oh my God, it's 18 minutes.
Yeah. We see less and less of that though. Like
Yeah.
it seems like we're back to like a 35, 45-minute runtime because
Yeah.
that you saw a lot of that like in the early 2000s when the CD was like was a big deal and it was like we got to have 80 minutes of music here. Luckily,
Yeah.
we've kind of gotten away from that because it was a grind.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It had to
And
be
maybe
for making it as much as listening to it.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, because it's even the production, because if a song's 18 minutes long, that's going to cost a lot more money for the producer to produce.
Yeah.
Because you've got to edit 18 minutes worth of audio.
Right.
So the costs are you're gonna kind of spiral there.
Right. And then you'd have to, if you press that to vinyl, you'd have to do what, like three records to sound okay. It's crazy.
But then I wonder whether people have got like a less of an attention span now than they had because of social media.
Right.
So maybe the kind of the world of the 4 minute, you can't go past 4 minutes because no one's listened to the last 2. You're gonna do that.
Yeah. The last 12-minute enslaved song. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you about the cover art because I liked it immediately. I like the smeared reds and the blacks. It looks almost like blood on burned parchment.
Yeah.
Like an old wound or something. Like where did the idea for the artwork come from, and like how does it fit in?
I have to admit that the artwork came from I've forgotten his name now. He's a Russian guy, and he has disappeared off of social media.
Oh wow!
So back in 2020, or maybe even a little bit earlier than that, I came across some of his stuff, and I just followed him. And every once in a while, he put some new stuff up, and it just came across that one, and it said it's for sale. It's 30 euros.
Oh wow!
Which is like insanely cheap.
Wow.
And I was just like, well, I just love that. I'm just gonna buy it. So I bought the image. But I don't know, about 6 months, a year afterwards, he was sort of complaining that he was having problems in Russia with, but I believe it was after they invaded the Ukraine, they switched off PayPal in Russia. So he was not able to take payments.
Oh wow!
And then he just disappeared after that, and I haven't seen anything of him since.
Wow.
But he's obviously a really talented dude. He wasn't using AI because AI wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I don't think he's active anymore, which is a real shame.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's a very haunting tale. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you touched on working with Dave from Burial. I mean, I was watching some of the stuff on Instagram. He's absolute beast behind the kit. Do you think his style is influencing the songwriting that you're doing now, or is it just kind of he's adapting?
No, absolutely, he is. Yeah, the songs that I've kind of picked for the next EP are ones that I think suit his drumming style. And whenever you're I've got the exact opposite experience here than I did with the previous EP, because I never met Simon. Simon was like, we just
right.
conversed online. He had an electric drum kit at home, so he'd demo a song and then he'd send me the recording, and I'd kind of listen to it and say, "Oh, can you tweak this bit? Can you change this bit? Can you maybe do this here?" And then at the end of it, I had a finished demo, and then he then recorded what he demoed. But with Dave, because I'm actually in a room with him and we're kind of talking about stuff and just jamming, the songs are kind of they were on my computer in one form that just had kind of like a drum machine as the backing, and over time they're kind of developing to become, I think, they sound a little bit more natural than the previous ones. Dave's he's a very fluid drummer. Um, he's very organic, and I think that the songwriting is starting to follow that path a little bit, which is really nice, and it shows like a kind of an evolution. Yeah, and he's just a great guy as well. He's just really nice to spend time with him because he's just lovely. So yeah, big up Dave.
Well, your guitar playing on this thing it's all over the place. I love
In the best way.
Yeah, I love this. You have the shred solos and then the galloping riffs and stuff. Is there a certain piece of gear that you're like currently in love with that's on all over the album, or?
Not really.
Okay.
So I actually, I mean, at work, because I own, me and my wife and our business partner, we own a music school. So at work, I've got kind of amplifiers and all sorts of kit.
Right.
Here, I have nothing. It's all on the computer. So all of
wow.
the kind of all of the stuff software based now. And I mean, it has got to the point where it's kind of indistinguishable from the real kit. In fact, the producer that produced the last EP, Rob Hobson, another great name, he doesn't use any physical gear at all. It's all plugins on the computer. So I guess I have a few favorite kind of amp simulators, but in terms of like physical gear, it is just a guitar into an audio interface that's just like the one that's in front of you, and then from there into an amp simulator. And I've got a few that I love that are they are quite inspirational actually, because you turn them on, and when you've got a good one, and you start playing, and it's like, oh God, this sounds amazing. Obviously, that's a new gear day is inspirational for all musicians, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still online, but I remember sometime around the 2010s, the producer Jack Endino, he had his website is fascinating. He was doing a pedal versus a plugin. He was like basically his point was that the plugins were almost as good and much easier to use. And he was just, I mean, the detail and the science that he put into comparing, and there's all these charts and descriptions and it went on for, forever. But I just remember thinking, wow, that he's really taking the technology out for a test drive,
Yeah, I mean, we're probably a couple of years away from it being utterly indistinguishable. You can't tell what's real and what's like digitally kind of emulated. The interesting thing is that the singer Chris is a music producer in his own right, and he owns a recording studio in Manchester. He's the opposite. So he is purely kind of, I mean, he uses a computer to record the stuff like everybody does, but he's big into analog gear. So he's still got all of the big amps and, all of the rack stuff. And so he's the opposite kind of producer to Rob. And it's interesting to see that his way is becoming more and more of a niche. But in that, there is, as you know, like niches they're great for businesses. He will become well known for him being not a digital producer. A bit like with the long songs, like the bands that have got the long songs, as that dies out more and more, the ones that have got the long songs, that becomes their niche, right? Like against the grain. But yeah, so in long answer to a short question, I don't really have a piece of inspirational gear other than the plugins.
Yeah. Well, guitar wise, is there like what are some names that are like kind of in your DNA as a guitar player?
There's so many. But I've already mentioned the kind of 80s shredders. Yngwie Malmsteen, Paul Gilbert, Steve Vai, Joe Satriani. But
Yeah.
then in the metal world, I mean, there's so many. If I could name a few, Chuck Schuldiner from Death.
Yeah.
I really, you mentioned Nile before, so I listened to a lot of Nile.
Yeah.
So I think the original guitarist Dallas Toller Wade, I used to love him. The kind of the Jeff Loomises of the world, from
Oh, yeah.
Nevermore. And plus, there's so many. Necrophagist. Do you remember them?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So Mohammed Sukumes, and Christian Muenzer, the guys from that band. But then, also the bands like Suffocation. I did in Nailed. We actually did a short tour with Suffocation back in the 2009, something like that. And watching them play was just like,
Yeah.
they were just so good.
Yeah. That's very cool. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think we saw them not how long ago? Year and a half?
We saw Suffocation like about a year and a half
Yeah,
ago. Yeah. And the new singer he's great. Yeah.
lots of personality.
Yeah. He really sounded
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
So I love A Wolf Amongst Horsemen. It hits like a siege. You got this blast beats, galloping riffs, apocalyptic lyrics. I love the 20,000 spikes piercing the sky. It feels so cinematic and brutal. Is there a larger narrative at work there? It kind of struck me like Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah, it is. So, yeah, it's Vlad the Impaler. So it's a bit of I guess it's a bit of a metal kind of like trope, isn't it? There's so many people that have used it as like
Yeah.
their imagery. But I was on holiday in the south of England a few years ago, and I just watched this documentary about him, and it was just so interesting. I mean, like, I know he was an unbelievably brutal tyrant, but
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
story of his life is just absolutely compelling. And it just started just coming to me with I thought, right, I'm just gonna write. I know this has been done like 1,000 times before, but I'm just gonna
Yeah.
write some lyrics about it, and it just fitted that song so well. So yeah, it is. You are right. It is Vlad the Impaler.
Well, we always tease everything we like has heads on spikes because I think at the time we were into The Flash and then The Walking Dead. I was like, oh, look, more heads on spikes. Game of
Yeah,
Thrones, more heads on spikes. I'm like,
yeah,
apparently
absolutely.
we like heads on spikes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not something that you tell everybody, but you gotta know your audience before you bust that one out.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean.
We do have a cat, Vladimir. He's a Russian blue, but
Well, there you go.
he's he's a bit of a character as well.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
he's one of those you have to ask permission to pet because sometimes it's
Oh, okay.
okay, sometimes it's no.
Yeah.
I always ask permission first with him.
Yeah.
Did you? So also, um, it kind of raises the question for the wolf among the horsemen. Is it kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing, or is it like something like a more feral than the horsemen themselves? So if you had to name a modern public day figure who embodies that kind of energy, who would you pick?
Oh my God, that's a question that I don't think I have an answer to. I don't. I genuinely. Wow. But heck. I don't know. I don't know. I can't think of anyone.
There's
But that
there's
is
so
that is an
many.
amazing question though. But I
There's
just
so many kind of evil, well, look at P. Diddy. I mean, not that everybody thought he was the greatest guy in the world, but really 1,000 things of baby oil? The
yeah.
hell, dude?
Yeah. Well,
Even somebody like Bill Cosby. I mean, he was America's dad, and then he still did all those weird
Yeah.
things. So it's like they have this weird double dichotomy.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Ted Bundy.
Ted Bundy,
Ted
yeah.
Bundy.
Everybody thought he was the greatest guy ever. He was in jail still charming people. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, he's so great.
All right, I have to ask you about the Grove of the Woad Witch, which I had to go look it up, and that's always a good thing, So, um, how did you land on that concept? I mean, were you consciously drawing on the ancient use of the Woad die by the warriors, or was it more like a atmosphere sorcery kind of thing?
To be honest, the genesis of that song is the first Leviathan album. There's a
Okay.
song that's called "The Hammer of the Witches,"
Okay.
and I've just always loved the imagery of the concept of a witch.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of the kind of the powerful woman. And we kind of like wrote that song. Dan penned the lyrics to it, and I basically had another go at what he did the first time around,
Okay.
which is I wanted the idea to be that there was a woman accused of witchcraft. And in my head, the concept would be that witch is imprisoned, and then put on trial, and then condemned to death and taken to the stake to be burned. But then it actually turns out that she is a witch, and at the last minute she destroys her accusers.
Oh wow.
And I thought that was like an amazing concept the first time round. But then this time, I think I had another go, and I think I got it slightly. I did it slightly better, I think, than the first time. I mean, not to say that the lyrics weren't great the first time; they were absolutely
Right.
amazing.
Right.
But my
Mm.
idea was the same back then. But I don't know whether I've done a better job of telling that story. I've said to myself that if I ever write a book, it'll be that, and it will start with the same the lyric at the start. They came by torchlight, these grim-faced men of God. I thought that as a first line in a book could just be like that'd be
Yeah.
that'd draw you in, wouldn't it? Yeah, but
That does draw you in.
it
Totally.
was actually Chris that because Chris we had the lyrics, and when Chris was starting to do the vocals, he was like, no, it needs to start with that line. So it was him that went like, that's the first thing that I want to sing.
Mm.
But there you go. And the woad thing, I mean, like that's just, I think that, the I've always been interested in history, and British history is something that particularly interests me. The woad, as you pointed out in your lovely review, was that a dye that the ancient Britons used to paint their faces blue. And one of the first mentions of the Britannic people is through a historian, I believe, called Tacitus, who took kind of Julius Caesar's accounts of the first time that they came to the British Isles. The first thing they saw of the Britons was these blue-faced demons
Oh wow.
facing them from across the landscape. And I just thought that again, that was like that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
What do you think she would look like? Would she be young, like a young sorceress, or should she be old and gnarled?
I don't know. I probably she'd probably look innocent. That's the
Mm.
only thing that I could say. I don't know whether they'd be old or young or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I was so inspired. This is my road witch tattoo. It's still under plastic. It's
Oh yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
the three phases of the moon.
Mm.
Cool.
Yeah, it's still healing. It's getting to that really itchy stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
know
should have had Woad Witch written under it. That'd be awesome.
it.
So
Oh,
I really liked the Of the Gray, the kind of like little instrumental palette cleanser. It's so bard-like and
Palate
mandolin
cleanser.
sounding.
yeah. Hardly.
It kind of reminded me of the guy in The Witcher when he comes out. And I like the way it kind of gradually turns unsettling. So what
Yeah,
kind of instrument did you use to make that mandolin sound?
it's just a guitar.
Wow.
It's just it's an acoustic guitar. It's this acoustic guitar.
Oh wow.
So,
Yeah.
but I mean, you're not the first person to say it sounds like a mandolin. And the only thing I can kind of like, the body of this guitar is smaller than it would be on a kind of full sized one, and I wonder whether it's got kind of like some higher pitched kind of tones in there, and that is reminiscent of something like a mandolin. But you're not the first person to say that actually.
Mm.
There was a review of the EP on a podcast a few weeks ago, and they said pretty much the same thing. So it must be something to do with that.
So Also, between the Lantern and the Dead of Light, I kind of love that kind of theme where you're in limbo between two worlds. Um, and of course, I can't possibly think about a lantern without getting into the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe
Okay.
somewhere in my head. I think but I would read it and I read it to my kids, so it's stuck in my DNA somewhere. Um, but did you have any like fantasy or novels or things in your childhood growing up that kind of led to kind of some of those themes?
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah.
So my dad read that and all of the subsequent books. In fact, that was probably my um first time that the kind of the idea of a fantasy world had been presented to me. And I used to absolutely love those books. And so it's funny that you mentioned them, but probably the journey that I'm on now, kind of possibly to a certain extent started back there, because it kind of unlocked my imagination, I guess, um, to the idea of fantasy as a concept. So I'm going to say The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
I was always surprised that they've never made like I don't know that I know of a film out of it, adaptation of The Magician's Nephew because I always thought that was a great book and you get this whole backstory on Jada. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they'll work on it someday, but
I think maybe they ran out of steam, didn't they? Because they did make films and they were not very. They
There's
were.
not enough reviews where they don't emphasize what a cunt Edmund was enough, in my opinion. I mean, they should they
Yeah,
should they should explore that a little more because that's when I talk to my brother about that's the first thing we think of is it's all his fault, the little bastard, you know? It's like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. He wasn't. They needed a Joffrey, didn't they?
right,
yeah.
That's what
right.
they needed to do. They needed to make him despisable,
Yeah, absolutely.
despicable.
Yeah.
And but they I think they perhaps I don't know. I just don't think anyone's ever got that right. It's never been.
Right, right. All
Maybe
she
somebody
needed was
will.
chocolates. It just took
Yeah,
chocolates, really. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
oh no, they're Turkish
Turkish
delights.
delights, yes.
Turkish. Oh God, I
Right.
stand corrected. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So,
My mum used to get me a box of Turkish delights every Christmas.
were they
Uh,
worth the apocalypse
no,
of the universe? No.
no. Well, she used to get them because I've been
Uh,
like Turkish delights, like something that's like
yeah,
and she used to buy them. I had to tell her to stop eventually because I was like, this is not good.
yeah, exactly right. That's funny. Mm-mm.
So for the video for that one, is it mostly stock footage or did you get to
Oh
be
yeah,
the figure under the white yeah, thing?
It's
yeah.
mostly
Oh
stock.
God, yeah. Yeah, it's mostly stock footage, and there's bits of. I guess that song was about the film, the Thing. So that's my favorite horror movie of all time. So there's little clips from that film in there as well. I think out of the four tracks that are on the EP, there was actually five originally, and there was one that got cut altogether because I just didn't feel the vibe of it. We recorded the drums for it, but in the end I just canned it because it was just not worth taking any further. And out of the remaining four, that one is, in my opinion, it's the one that's the kind of the weakest musically. I think there's a few moments in there where I wish I'd kind of perhaps developed the ideas a little bit more. So for this next EP, I think I'm going to be a little bit more careful that I don't feel like that about any of the. There's just a couple of riffs that are just a bit like there's one or two that I really like, but then there's a couple that there's just a bit.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I just don't really
Yeah.
vibe with them. They're just kind of there.
Well, I mean, stock or not, the video turned out great. It does come across like a little mini horror movie. I thought it turned out
Yeah,
really good. Yeah.
yeah, it's cool, isn't it? But
Yeah,
like,
really cool.
I'd love to have the budget to be able to do something like properly
Yeah.
next time. It's just so expensive,
Oh, yeah.
So
Mhm.
everything pretty much everything apart from the production, I've done myself.
Yeah.
The production, I always had this idea in my head that I was gonna spend some money on that because you're only as good as the sound that you put across, right? And I used a producer we've used before, and who's like Rob, who's absolutely fantastic. And that's where I was going to spend the money because, well, I'm never going to make a living out of this, am I? I'm never going to get any money back. But it's an investment in enjoyment at the end of the day. But
Yeah.
you've got to be a little bit careful because you could end up spending
I
$10,000,
know. No.
and you're not going to get that money back. And
Right.
I've always got this thing in my head that I own a business, and I'm constantly thinking, well, if we spend money, are we going to get that money back? And unfortunately, that extends also to the kind of the projects outside of that you think if we spend £5,000, we're going to get it back, and the answer is no. so you've got to be be sensible, haven't you?
Yeah, I just got a Mike Campbell's book, Tom Petty's guitar player, and I'm hoping that he goes into what some of those videos cost back then. Because remember how elaborate his videos
Oh,
were.
jeez, man.
It was just they made his career. I mean, but you can imagine how much money was spent. Wow.
They must again though, I do feel for the kind of the up and coming bands because there is a pressure, isn't there, that they've got to do that. And then, if you're either paying for that yourself, and then the problem is that you're potentially not going to make that money back, but it's highly likely that you won't, or there's a record company that's giving you an advance to pay for it, but then you're going to end up
owing them,
paying it back in one way or another in the future. But it's so expensive. Music, just making music is such an expensive endeavor. If you want it to, if you haven't got the skills to make it sound amazing yourself, or to look amazing, you've got to bring somebody else in, haven't you? And the cost of that can be astronomical.
And there's so many bands. It's just it's that one thing about the labels was they kind of were a filter to a certain degree. But now that it's just like the Wild West now, where everyone's got a Bandcamp page, everyone's got an Instagram page. That's what we try to do with the show is kind of try to be a filter. We kind of try to say, all right, we're gonna talk this week. We're gonna talk about these 3 albums that you should check out. Like try to rein it in a little. So it's so much. So.
Have you ever thought about just doing a like Weird in the Woods, like with just the band performing out in the woods somewhere with some skulls and maybe you could cast somebody as the plague doctor? Which one of you would you think would be a good plague doctor?
Oh yeah, every day. We actually did. So Chris, the vocalist, he has a band called Cairns, and Cairns are they're like a post black metal band. I'll send you a link. They are very different, but they're very worth checking out. And I did some shows with them last year, and we played a black metal festival in the north of England in Cumbria. And it's called the Darkness Over Cumbria Festival, and it is literally in the woods. So you go to this hill. And the hill is completely enveloped in a wood, and the guy that owns it is like I don't know whether he's used the wood for things over the years, but he's built roads that kind of go around the hill so he can access the wood higher up. But the thing is that because he's got these spaces where he's put like turning circles in for vehicles and stuff, it's perfect for camping. So he then created this kind of area, and there's like a kind of a structure that the band's playing, but it is enveloped in these woods. And
that's cool.
They even have a pool that they call the Moon Pool, and at midnight on each night of the festival, somebody gets baptized like a pagan baptism.
Oh, awesome!
And they all come out with the torches, and unfortunately, I wasn't there for that bit because I had to go. I was going on holiday, so I had to go a play.
Right. It's a shame.
But it was an amazing little thing.
It sounds amazing. It really does. Yeah. That's where you want to go see like Gorgoroth or something. That's the environment. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so we play a game on the show. The game is called Blaspheming Monikers, okay? And here's how it works. I have 5 band names in front of me. One of them is not real. So we're gonna see if you can guess which one of these is not a real band. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. 1, Black Radar. 2, Black Christ. 3, Black Comedy. 4, Black Griffin. And 5, Black Reflex.
Hang on a minute. I was going to straight away say Black Reflex, but now I'm wondering whether that's like I don't know, whether you're trying to
Here, let me read
like
through them again. Black Radar, Black Christ, Black Comedy, Black Griffin, Black Reflex.
I'm gonna say Black Reflex is not real.
They are thrash from Italy. They have one album, but they are real.
I knew
The
you were.
Reflex. All right, so
So
that leaves Black Radar, Black Christ, Black Comedy, and Black Griffin.
Black Griffin is not real.
Very good. Yes. Very good.
Black comedy is a horrible.
Black Comedy is from Norway, the industrial metal. Yeah. Black Christ is heavy metal from Finland, and Black Radar is heavy metal from Germany. So you did pretty
Great.
good. Pretty good. Got it in the second round. Yeah.
No, we were talking about like shticks. Like we saw this one band, Castle Rat, and they actually have I think it's their bass player that dresses like the Plague Doctor, like for the whole set.
Yeah.
And then they have like a Dracula type figure, and their drummer wears like this crown of horns, and the lead singer like wears a chainmail bikini with half her boobs hanging out. And they actually have a woman who doesn't play an instrument in the band that just comes on stage and they do these really weird dramatic fight scenes, which
Like
is the worst sword play
mock
I've ever
sword
seen.
fighting. Yeah.
But it was sold out. It was sold out.
Yeah. People want an experience, don't they? And I think that sounds like an experience. I've got a question for you.
Okay.
What's the craziest band name that you've ever come across as a real band?
What was the one that Dan Liker said? Unregistered sex offender. He said that is such a cool name. You don't even need a moniker. You don't even need a logo. Unregistered sex offender.
Wow. We once played with a band that was called Necrosadistic Goat Torture.
That's probably been in one of my blaspheming monikers in the past. I've probably put them out there.
Real
Yeah.
band.
Yeah,
Real
real
band.
band. That's
We
great.
did talk to, from your neck of the woods, Lesbian Bed Death, which is another kind of like off the wall name, but they do really well.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, that was a great interview. Yeah. Yeah. They're a good band.
Lots of crazy ones. Like
There was one other one. What was the one that we asked Black Braid? It was REO Rape
yeah,
Wagon.
that's a bad name.
Oh,
REO
right.
Rape Wagon.
That's real too. So yeah. You're not getting any FM airplay with that name. No.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, we talked to Don from Nunslaughter, and he said sometimes in the marquee they made him change it to non-slaughter, or I was like, really?
Right.
Oh, wait a minute. No, but the funniest thing was Nunslaughter, someone came up to him and said they referred to the band as Nun's Laughter.
It's like, no.
That's what they saw. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. If you put a space, it is Nun's
Yeah.
Laughter. But I never saw that. Yeah. So anyway.
So I love that you shared kind of that lukewarm Danish review, which suggested the energy fades, which I strongly disagree with, by the way. But I admired you for posting that, because some bands would only post the ones with praise. So, what kind of inspired you to share that too? I mean, or could it be like, maybe you hit a nerve, maybe the guy didn't have his coffee yet, you always feel good when a little bit of haters crawl out.
I just feel that it deserved to be shared. And the biggest thing that I thought about that was obviously, you read something like that and you're a bit disappointed. Can't not be. And I don't care how thick-skinned you might say you are. If you've put a lot of time, effort, energy, and money into something that you think's pretty good, when somebody says something like that, you can't help but feel slightly offended.
Right.
And I did feel like that. But at the same time, when that magazine approached me, Metalized magazine, who were like the only metal magazine in Denmark, the guy just emailed me out of the blue and said, "We're going to review your EP. Would you like to spend a little bit of money on advertising?" And I was like, "Okay, it was like €80 or something like that. Why not?" The thing that I deeply respected was that despite the fact that I paid them some money for some advertising, they still said what they thought, and I
Yeah.
thought that was, I thought that was great.
Yeah.
And I know to them that kind of money is like, it's only a little bit, but they weren't in any way influenced by the fact that that somebody had paid them for a service, and I think that is, I respect that. I think that's great. The guy
Yeah.
didn't like it, but you can't prove it. You can't impress everybody 100% of the time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
So I was thinking, like, if the Leviathan had an Eddie, what do you think it would look like, and what would its name and backstory be?
oh God, can we make the thing on the face on the image that's behind you? Can we get that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
like 50 foot tall,
Okay.
uh, and with a face that's on fire? That'd be great. But I'm not sure that my budget
Yeah.
will
No, I know what you mean.
allow that.
Yeah.
I don't know
My
whether
first concert, my first concert was a Power Slave Maiden, and
oh yeah,
it kind of ruined it for me because there's no following that up, right? I think the next show I
no,
went to was like Loverboy or something, and I was like,
it's just like
where's the
this is
show? Where's the giant monsters?
yeah. So my wife Natalie, she took me to see Iron Maiden in I think 2019 before COVID.
Uh-huh.
She is not into metal at all, and she bought the tickets thinking that I could go with someone else. But
Uh-huh. Right.
unfortunately, because she put her name as being the lead person, she couldn't put somebody else's name on the ticket.
Oh, okay.
So she ended up having to come with me. And let me just say this: she appreciated the explosions.
Okay.
She appreciated the fire.
Okay. Right.
She didn't enjoy the rest, anything else.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was thinking, we talked with George Purves from Spider God, and he started out by doing a lot of covers, although I love his Sabrina Carpenter XOXO. If you had to the Leviathan up a pop song, what would you pick?
Um, I mean, there's been a couple in recent memory, that might. There was one by Miley Cyrus
Okay. Mm.
a couple of years ago that I had taught at work to
Okay.
some of my students. That one would have kind of translated quite well to metal. I can't remember the name of it, but the ultimate for me would be to do a black metal version of The Chain by Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've always had it in my mind that that would work.
Yeah.
But Lindsey Buckingham, the guitarist, he played so much stuff in so many weird tunings that
Mm.
it's really awkward to play. So without like having a guitar that's tuned to the way that he tuned it,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
quite difficult to make it work. I have actually started it, but I didn't get very far.
That's a great idea, though. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was excited to see that you were working on two new The Leviathan tracks at Noise Boy Studios. What's your experience like been with them?
It's great. Yeah, it's really cool. I think that some of the material now is quite old to me because it's been on my computer for quite a few years. But there's definitely a an evolution, and I think I'm kind of, I know I'm 40 now. I'm no spring chicken, but I am actually quite new to songwriting. So the Grove, this probably will surprise you. The Grove of the Woad Witch is actually the first song that I ever wrote all the way through.
Oh, wow.
And I like I said when we were talking about Nailed, I went to university and I studied music at university, and I did compose then as part of what I did, but I never really had any faith in myself to be able to do it really well or better than people that were my peers around me. And so that's the first song that I ever wrote all the way through. And I think there's a kind of a development. I think the ideas now are a little bit more professional. There's a little bit more. I think it sounds a little bit more natural. It's a more expressive. There's a little bit more nuance in there, and so yeah, it's been really cool to start to just see those songs kind of develop. One of them is at the point where it's fully demoed, vocals, everything. It just needs some bass on it, and then the other two are still in the kind of developmental stages. And then there is a track that's fully acoustic again, but
Oh,
the
wow.
difference with this one is that it's going to have vocals on it. That one is, to be honest with you, I've recorded it, but I've forgotten how it went. So I'll have to relearn it.
As a guitar teacher, what is your most requested, oh, teach me this song from your students?
Do you know, a lot of the students I have, they don't really tell me. So I do the older students, they seem to have a clearer idea of what their musical identity is, and but the influences are unbelievably varied. So I have a lot of students that are into rock and metal. I've got
Hmm.
quite a few students that are into death and black metal as well, which is awesome. Um, but they can be quite coy, slightly embarrassed about asking me to teach them something. And honestly, I have to ask again and again and again. Listen, can I make a list of things on my phone that you want to
Right, right.
listen? And once you've broken down the initial barriers, you will get some form of answer. My adult students, again, I have everybody that's like people that are into kind of shred. And then I've got like people that are into kind of Chuck Berry, kind of
Okay. Right.
50s, 60s kind of. I had a crazy Friday night a few months ago where there was a guy that came and I taught him a song called Apache by the Shadows. Uh,
Okay.
and
The 60s, the 60s shadows?
that's right, that's right. So the very 60s kind of
Yeah,
sounding.
yeah.
And then the following lesson, I was doing a Meshuggah song, a Meshuggah
Oh,
song.
wow. That's a jump. Yeah.
New Millennium Cyanide Christ, I think it was.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So I
Yeah.
went from that
Yeah.
to that within
That's pretty
45
much
minutes.
that all of rock and roll falls in there somewhere.
So people don't. I mean, like I don't really get the obvious, like, oh, teach me Smoke on the Water, or
Right, right, right.
teach me Smells Like Teen Spirit. That kind of doesn't really happen. People are a little bit more, they're a little bit older, a little bit more savvy, and then therefore their tastes have gone beyond that kind of really obvious kind of guitar stuff, and into something else. So on my phone, I've got like lists and lists and lists of incredibly disparate pieces of music, everything from kind of like thrash metal to death metal to black metal to Miley Cyrus
Right,
to
right.
Taylor Swift.
See, I thought
In
you were going to
between.
say that they want you to play this video game music, Can you
Yeah,
figure out, do you have that sometimes?
yeah, I do. Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah. That's still. So sometimes when people, when they've started the music lessons, they don't necessarily know what it is that they want to do. So one of
Yeah.
the things that it's normally kind of teenage lads, teenage boys that do this. They'll say, "I'd like to learn something from," and then they'll give me the name of the game.
Video game. Yeah.
Kind of go away, and sometimes it's really got a really cool kind of
Yeah.
melody or something. Sometimes it's impossible to be able to play it. Um, anyway, there we go.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you have new music coming. Have you thought about maybe doing a tour or a festival or some kind of live ritual at some point?
I think possibly, um, possibly try to do our gig at
Got it.
some point. And we'll just see. I think everybody that's involved at the minute, Dave, Chris, and Darren, who's the bass player. I think Darren, the slightly inconvenient thing is Darren used to live in Manchester, which is about 15 miles from where I live, but he has moved back home to Northern Ireland. So he
Oh,
now lives in Belfast,
oh, wow.
which is a little bit more kind of complicated,
Yeah.
because he has to either take the ferry, or he has to fly over, and it's only a short journey, and it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
30 minutes by plane, but it's still like a little inconvenient. So we'll have
Yeah,
to see
yeah.
how we get on.
Yep.
Yeah, so hopefully maybe we'll get you over to Baltimore at some point.
You never say never.
This is the Snaggletooth Extreme Metal Podcast.